to Martin Kaur of Malaysia. Just before the broadcast, I spoke to him in the halls of the climate change summit that is taking place here. Martin Kaur is the executive director of the South Center, a research center of 51 developing countries. I asked him for his analysis of where the climate talks stand.
We're on the last day, and there's still so many issues that are unresolved. The first is whether we will really get the KP second commitment period in its full form and not a diluted form.
What does that mean, full form?
That's the Kyoto Protocol. That is, you have to amend the Kyoto Protocol to put in the new commitments of the developed countries. We don't want just a political statement. And secondly, on the Green Climate Fund, where developing countries are hoping to attract billions of dollars so that they can do their climate work. They are finalizing the last parts of this fund, but they haven't really got it yet. I think the sticking issue is who will be the interim secretariat of this fund. And the developing countries want it to be either the UN Convention Secretariat or the United Nations Office in Geneva. But the developed countries seem to want the Global Environment Facility that is linked to the World Bank. And that's a no-no for the developing countries. They want a new fund that is independent, especially of the World Bank or the Global Environment Facility.
Why?
I think many countries have had rather critical experiences, negative experiences in dealing with the bank or with the GEF. It's cumbersome, it is not equitable and so on, and that is why they have called for a new fund. The whole rationale of a new fund is that it is independent. And you cannot be independent if the Secretariat belongs to someone else, which is in a way a competitor, and that's the World Bank and the GEF.
What is your assessment of the U.S. role here at the climate change conference?
Well, I think this is the big elephant in the room because the U.S., which is, historically the biggest emitter, does not seem to be able to take on commitments that it should. There was so much hope when Obama came in. I remember the first plenary in which the U.S. delegation stood up and said, "This is the new United States. We have arrived again and we're going to take the lead." There was so much hope. But the targets they have put in, the role which they have played, the pledge system that they have given for all countries, including developed countries, compared to the legally, the legally binding system that was mandated, has actually set back the agenda that was put forward in Bali. And I think it's happening again here. So we understand maybe the administration has its own problems. We know the situation in the U.S. is very complex with the Congress, the administration, and so many climate deniers that are in important positions. But it should not hold back the other countries from doing what they should be doing,
Looks like the conference is going to be extended until tomorrow. What about the role of China, and what do you want to see come out of this? Or do you think this is what many are calling yet another failed COP?
Well, we don't know. I didn't know it was being extended. I think China, at least on the ground, where it really counts, in terms of actions, China is setting a very good example for other developing countries, and perhaps even for the developed countries. They have their institutions in place. They have put climate action into the premier economic institution, the NDRC. They have tried to get the provinces and the municipalities involved. They have set themselves modest, but for developing country, high targets. They are trying to implement it in terms of laws and measures and so on. Is it enough? Probably not. Nobody is doing enough.
They have become the largest emitter, though.
Yeah, but that's because they have a very high population. Their emissions per capita at 5.5 to 6 tons per capita is something like number 80 in the world. They are by no means 80. They are the 80th biggest polluter in the world in terms of per capita, which is what really counts. The United States is above 20 tons per capita. And there are many other developing countries, and of course all developed countries that are above China. So it is not fair to look at absolute emissions, because in absolute emission terms, of course China and India are high. But for example, in the case of India, their per capita emissions is between 1 and 2 tons, which is like 120, ranked 120 in the world. So the sin of India and China, if you will call it a sin, is that they have high populations, which we can hardly blame them for, because there is an accident of history, that they have high populations and they were not divided up by colonial masters, as in the case of other countries that were divided up.
You're from Malaysia?
I'm from Malaysia, that's right.
How does climate change affect Malaysia?
Well, I think in my region, in Asia, in East Asia, the last 2 years has seen devastating floods in Thailand this year, and in Pakistan for the last 2 years. And there are, of course, also floods in Malaysia. And these extreme weather events have been exacerbated by climate change. You know, we don't have clear scientific evidence it is caused by climate change, but we think certainly that it has been made worse by climate change. And extensive floods have become the most damaging aspect of climate change in this short term. We know that we will have sea level rise, we will have drought and other things. In Africa, drought, I think, is very serious. So climate change is really happening now, and it is affecting not only the lives of people, it is affecting jobs. In Thailand, most of the industrial factories had to close down. Many of them are still closed.
Because of flooding?
Because of flooding, and I think 1/4 of the rice crop has been affected. Of course, this has repercussions on the global economy as well, because this has disrupted the supply chain for computers, for motor cars outside of Thailand, and it has affected the supply of rice for the rest of the world. So it is a very serious phenomenon already taking place, with dramatic effects on jobs and the economy.
Malaysian analyst Martin Kaur, Executive Director of the South Center, Research Center of 51 Developing Countries, speaking to us in the halls of the COP17, the UN Conference on Climate Change here in Durban, South Africa. When we come back, we'll hear a major protest that's taking place right now in the plenary and around the conference center. We'll also hear an exclusive interview with George Papandreou, the former Prime Minister of Greece. He's here in Durban, South Africa. Stay with us.
Kyoto, we've been loving you too long to let you die here in Durban. You gave us carbon trading.